This reading is from censored number 115. And before I begin, I'd like to read 3 biblical quotes that are here on the just before the article. Prove all things, hold fast that which is good, from 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 21. Also, he that oppresses the poor to increase his riches, and he that gives to the rich, shall surely come to want. Proverbs 22, verse 16. And he that makes haste to be rich shall not be innocent. Proverbs 28, verse 20. The title of this censored article is Listen, Little Man and Woman by William J. Eisenman. Supposedly, our government exists to serve the people. But Washington laughs off the idea of the public interest. For a long time now, Washington has made a cult of outsourcing and privatizing, while forcing our government into debt and crisis. Conservative ideology has infiltrated throughout our government and has shown itself to be a movement based on greed. Its theory of economics is based on selfishness as a virtue. American conservatism has always sided with business over the little guy, has loved laissez-faire, has hated taxation, unions, regulations, state ownership, and has always exhibited an unbiblical deference and love for the rich. Conservatives are cynics and disdain reform and progress. The love of money exhibited by conservatives has moved Congress to shift the country's tax burden to workers, consumers, small business, anyone except those who have the ability to pay. The United States deficit problem today is not so much a spending problem as it is a lack of revenue problem. And this problem was deliberately brought about by excessive tax cuts for the wealthy over the last 30 years. Once upon a time in America, in the days of President Eisenhower, the highest marginal tax rate was 91%, and the economy was in great shape. During that time, Congress passed the National Interstate and Defense Highways Act in 1956, as well as the National Defense Education Act in 1958. There was money for infrastructure. Today's highest tax rate is 35%, and if Congress would have allowed the George W. Bush tax cuts to expire, the rate would go back to 39.6%. Anyone with just a modicum of common sense should be able to see that for the last 30 years the wealthy have had a tax holiday and have failed to pay their fair share of taxes. You, little man and little woman, made up for that. During these 30 years, the wealthy have failed to pay their fair share of taxes. The middle class and the poor, yes, the poor, have made up this revenue shortage. In 2009, America's highest earners, 74 people, quintupled their pay from $50 million to $519 million. Of course, conservative Tea Party dupes and many Republicans would defend this obscene upward siphoning of money, dreaming that one day they could do the same. Nationally, the average annual wage fell by $384 to $39,269, while the medium wage fell by $253 to $26,261. And the fools among us believe this is a natural occurrence. Wall Street experienced a banner year in 2010 after our taxpayer bailout. These five, Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan Chase and Company, Bank of America Corporation, Citigroup Incorporated, and Morgan Stanley, took in $135 billion under Bush's TARP program and then borrowed billions more from the Federal Reserve's emergency lending facilities. What? You say your home is being foreclosed? You're out of a job? Your unemployment ran out? You could use some help? Screw you! You're just a consumer, a little man and a little woman. Pull yourselves up by the bootstraps and quit whining. That's what conservatives will tell you. They'll say you're lazy, that you don't really want to work. You'd rather sit home on your ass and collect 2/3 of your last salary as unemployment insurance, which, by the way, is also taxed. In 2008, banks were near insolvency, and the stock market dropped by 18% in 1 week. Between 2007 and 2008, prices rose and real estate prices fell. During the summer of 2008, depression stalked the world, and it was clear that the free market had failed. The policies that caused the financial meltdown were put in place over the last 30 years by both Republicans and Democrats. The get way of life, the devil's economics, was given free rein. There was a pretense that capitalism is infallible. These people were blind to the fact that financial markets can go haywire. As we look back on the banking crisis of 2007-2008, we find flawed mortgage-backed paper to be a precipitating cause of the catastrophe. Under President Bill Clinton, the United States experienced 10 years of expansion of the economy. Clinton left George W. Bush a surplus, no deficit. Conservative Republicans should have done the Snoopy dance. Between 1996 and 1998, unemployment levels fell to rates seen only in the 1960s. The economy was humming along. Inflation dropped, and easy money was readily available from the Federal Reserve. In 1982, under President Ronald Reagan, the unemployment rate was 10.8%. Inflation in 1979 was 13%, which dropped in 1984 to 4%. A dirty little secret of economics is that unemployment keeps inflation in check. Are you, little man and little woman, beginning to see why, in the bailouts, Wall Street came before Main Street? Who guarantees and sustains you, little man and little woman? Who has your back? The question is, why do you accept this? Clinton raised taxes and created a surplus. Conservative Republicans and their Democratic enablers are wrong about tax cuts for the rich creating jobs. It's a fiction. Tax cuts should only be employed when there is a surplus as givebacks, not a job creating tool. Globalization is a political strategy, not an economic one. It has nothing to do with the market. In the past, in America, government troops, police, the American Legion, and hired killers broke up strikers who were simply wanting better pay and working conditions. Employers at that time sought a political strategy to keep workers from leaving. It is a lie that markets trump politics. With all their socialistic policies, German workers earn twice what American workers do. Hey, Tea Party dupes, still don't want the public option? Globalization is a hoax. The free market and democracy are not bedfellows. Capitalist expansion is weakening and conceivably destroying working class politics. Global trade, as carried on today, has led to the exploitation of labor and resources around the world. Welfare payments amount to 1% of this country's budget. As a result of well-conceived propaganda crusade, most Americans don't like welfare. The assault on means-tested programs can be viewed as an expression of the greed of organized and mobilized business interests and politicians that they fund. These are the haves that are always bellowing for tax cuts for the rich, which results in the poor and middle class having to ante up. President Reagan cut welfare and increased the military budget. The 1983 tax increase regarding Social Security was paid by working people. In 1996, under Clinton and the Republicans, aid to families with dependent children was eliminated and made the responsibility of the states devolution, federal lump sum grants. Those on welfare now had to work for their stipend, and their eligibility time was now limited. For centuries, certain people, not the poor, have proclaimed that welfare hurts the poor. The poverty rate in 1950 was 30%. By 1973, it was only 11%. It's often said that helping the poor makes them lazy and creates disincentives. How is it we never hear the opposite? That riches make the wealthy lazy? Why do we never hear that too much money creates disincentives? This helping the poor talk, making them lazy, is also a hoax. Business hates the welfare state. The Chamber of Commerce, who we saw in Censored 114, the hidden enemy, wanted to install a dictator in the White House to replace President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The Chamber of Commerce was against Social Security, and it seems to thrive on intensifying economic insecurity. When we cut programs that help the poor and those like Social Security, we create a glut in the labor market, which lowers wages. When Ronald Reagan, excuse me, when Ronald Reagan was president, he had 500,000 people thrown off the Social Security disability rolls. He had means-tested programs cut. Poverty grew as the result of the creation of a class of workers exposed to insecurities of the market, a development that created both great wealth and great misery. Conservatives mystically believe that benefits for the poor weakens families and work incentives. Unfortunately, the poor do not function as a whole in order to fight these myths. Conservative think tanks create policy for our country as they try to bring about a militant democracy. 1/3 of Americans don't vote. In this way, they have forfeited their right to make decisions about their country. In many ways, their silence has allowed for the takeover of our country by the likes of the American right, the Christian right, the economic right, libertarians, neoconservatives, the wealthy, and corporations. The cost of the Iraq war is about $150 million daily. Vioxx caused the death of caused 27,000 heart attacks and killed thousands of people. The FDA allows 100,000 people to die yearly of adverse drug reactions, and 2 million people are made sick. But the agency has no qualms about lying about vitamins and going after nutrition doctors with SWAT teams. The FDA is simply a lapdog for industry and has never sought the testing of genetically modified foods. Today, the 5th leading cause of death in America is prescription drugs. The FDA allows industry to fool you in regard to irradiated food products. Labels might say something like cold pasteurization. What the hell? At this writing, 70% of our processed foods contain genetically modified ingredients. Companies like Monsanto actually believe they are doing God's work in trying to feed the world. But is anyone asking at what price? The USA Patriot Act was passed October of 2001, and it gutted the 1st, 4th, 5th, 14th, 6th, and 8th Amendments to the Constitution. Where's the mainstream hue and cry? Where's Republican outrage? Where's all this blah blah from the Supreme Court about strict constructionism? Is the Constitution to be honored, or is it truly just a damn piece of paper? The Conservative Heritage Foundation would like to see Christianity as the moral guide for the United States. It goes without saying that what they're talking about is their brand of militant Christianity. In line with this thinking, Vista hands out millions of dollars every year to fund faith-based programs. This is our government blatantly overriding the First Amendment to the Constitution, which forbids the supporting of any religion. Even New Jersey has a Department of Faith-Based Initiatives. Besides the First Amendment, it should also be clear to any critical thinker that any religion that can't prove that its deity exists deserves no monetary and no human support. The United States outspends every other country in the world on its military. The United States sells 57% of all the weapons to the world. Dick Cheney is responsible for setting up our present system where the Department of Defense outsources to private firms. In Iraq, as a result of these policies, Cheney's old company, Halliburton, charged $100 to clean a soldier's bag of laundry, and it fed the soldiers bad food and water. Halliburton has overcharged, peddled influence, received kickbacks, and got no bid deals. Private contractors in Iraq were getting $100 billion a year. In recent years, it has become quite clear that organized crime works closely with Wall Street, instituting financial schemes to launder their money. By now, it should be common knowledge that greed is destroying America. The extreme right movement believes greed is good, that the wealthy are blessed by God, and that money trumps patriotism. The poor are under attack, and the middle class and family are targets. For the last 30 years, a transfer of wealth from the middle class to the super wealthy has taken place. Today, the common wage earner bears the tax burden. In the 1950s, the top tax rate was 91%, and we understood the attitude that was in play early in the 20th century, that those with the money pay the taxes. In 1976, the top 1% of taxpayers earned 8.9% of all income in the country. But by 2005, that figure grew to 21.8%. From 1979 to 2005, incomes for the top 5% increased by 81%. Are the wealthy working harder than you? During the same period, incomes for the bottom 20% of taxpayers declined by 1%. Was that because you are lazy, little man and little woman? Today, 1% of the richest households own 34.3% of this country's private wealth. This is more than the combined wealth of the bottom 90%. And none of this occurred by accident. 25% of all the homeless in America today are Vietnam veterans. Doesn't this tell us how well the Republicans support the troops? George W. Bush's tax cuts amounted to $11 trillion, and without them there would be no deficit. And look how many jobs they created in China, India, and Singapore. Are you beginning to see the light yet, little man and little woman? The war in Afghanistan has cost $2 trillion and still counting, while the war in Iraq cost $3 trillion. The United States defense budget is now $670 billion, which includes $130 billion for Iraq, and does not cover related costs, which bring the bill to over $1 trillion. Some put the figure even higher. Our country's spending problem has nothing to do with discretionary spending, the spending on important social programs. It has to do with the military, subsidies, interest payments. Our country has a priority problem. United States trade agreements are not fair. The United States subsidizes much of the world with our trade agreements, especially China. We don't take care of our own. From 2000 to 2007, median household income fell 0.6%, and the poverty rate increased by 12.5%. The minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is equivalent to $15,000 a year. Can you live on that, little man and little woman? Unions fought for child labor laws, the 8-hour day, safe working conditions, equal pay for women. Unions defend human rights. Is it any wonder why conservative governors around the country are attacking unions, trying to emasculate them or downright killing them? President Ronald Reagan lowered the top tax rate from 70% to 28%, and today's rate is 35%. This statistic alone should be enough proof to all critical thinkers that for the past 30 years the wealthy have not been paying their fair share of taxes. There's no way around it. This has resulted in a revenue problem, a shortage. We don't have a spending problem in the discretionary spending portion of the budget. Conservatives, in order to institute their devilish agenda, have created an every man for himself environment throughout society. The median household income in 2000 was 47,599, And in 2005, under George W. Bush, it dropped to 46,326. From 2001 to 2007, the United States lost 7.2 million jobs. Oh, Tea Party dupes, that was before Obama became president. That was just an aside. Where were all those jobs created by the Bush tax cuts? In 2008, the trade deficit with China was $270 billion. And NAFTA increased our trade deficit with Mexico from $9.1 billion to $138.5 billion. While between 1994 and 2007, 1 million jobs were lost. The great sucking sound. More than 50% of United States jobs are created by small business. In 1980, CEO pay ratio was 40 to 1. But by 2005, it had grown to 411 to 1. If you, little man and little woman, believe CEOs work harder today to earn that kind of pay, you are duped. The top 1% of taxpayers owns 95% of all the financial wealth in America. When successive Congresses destroyed the rules and laws that protected us, capitalism became legalized robbery. Hey, Tea Party dupes, here's some of what we need to do to take the country back. Increase taxes on the wealthy, regulate and break up monopolies, tax stock market trades, and force banks to keep on hand realistic reserves. I didn't see that on any of their signs this summer. Today, or last summer, today, 2/3 of corporations pay no federal income taxes. In 1986, the corporate tax rate was cut from 46% to 34%, and it's been falling continually, while subsidies continue to grow and the jobs keep disappearing. The estate tax, which Republicans hate, affects only 0.6% of the richest Americans and is an outstanding example of whose side Republicans are on. Hey, Tea Party dupes, it's better you should fear big business rather than big government. Your government. The love of money for its own sake is a sickness. Today, crime and amorality is normal behavior for our modern day corporations. Corporate capitalism is the problem. Corporations rule our country, and they are running amok. The corporation's sole goal is making a profit. And as they see it, profits before people. Those conservative Republicans calling themselves Christians have yet to understand that market capitalism, our national religion, is the antithesis of Christian doctrine, of what Jesus taught. 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 10 warns Christians that the love of money is the root of all evil. Our form of capitalism has transformed evil into a virtue and immorality into morality. The corporation and its enablers have no moral impulse, which is to be for the other. Corporations care not for right or wrong or justice. Corporations are not persons. They have no heart. There is no actual precedent case in law that grants corporations personhood. The Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad of 1886 did not do it. The Supreme Court precedent that gave corporations personhood is a fiction, and all cases based on this fictional precedent are null and void. Adam Smith advised that corporations should be kept on a short leash. The corporation is an artificial construction, not a life form. Corporations are tools, and they have no interest in the public interest. Corporate behavior is sociopathic in regard to human goals and values. It is clear that there's enough blame to go around, but Wall Street's financial meltdown of March 2008 was the straw that broke the camel's back. The big five investment banks nearly brought the world's financial system to its knees. These behemoths took too many risks and exhibited too much greed. The big five failed, were sold, or became holding companies. And two mortgage lenders and AIG Insurance were put under government control. The cost of the bailout exceeded $1.1 trillion. Just $125 billion would have bailed out all the states, and billions to Main Street might have jump-started the economy. But Wall Street got caught up in the devil's economics, generating fees for themselves rather than their clients. Did you learn anything, little man and little woman? The end.